everything that we see on social media, a lot of the feeds that we follow, there's an algorithm. And so there's this idea that the algorithms of our life are discipling us more than the community of faith, the Bible, the Holy Spirit. And so we need to be intentionally engaging the community of faith. I would say more today than ever. Inevitably, it's Instagram, it's TikTok, it's Facebook, it's Netflix, it's Hulu, it's Amazon, it's our Google searches, right?
Yeah.
Our ChatGPT searches. It's not an accident, this certain political angles that I see versus what somebody else sees. And it's not just politics, it's money, it's everything, right? It's entertainment. If we're not intentionally in community, serving in community, being mentor relationships, grow groups, care groups, attending worship service regularly, all of those things, we are going to be discipled by the algorithms of life more than we are by the community of faith that God has ordained and God's word and the work of the Spirit.
Well, welcome to The Extra 10. My name is Ben Cartland, joined here once again by Jason Esposito. Jason, Happy New Year. First podcast of 2026. Welcome back, man.
I am so excited. Full disclosure, we restarted the podcast.
We did. We had to restart.
Because they're doing some work in the building. In the room next to the room that we're recording
when they started.
And it was hilarious because we were talking about sound machines. And then all of a sudden that sound, and it threw us off. We're like, we barely started. Let's just start it over. So if people hear some strange noises, it's not aliens.
No, it's not aliens.
It's not the Nephilim. It's an Old Testament reference. It is work being done, which is exciting because we're almost done with the work at Germantown campus, which is such a tool to make disciples of Jesus. And then we're going to start leaning into the Sussex location and some work being done there, as well as continual work around the world in South Sudan and in Alliance Berlin. So just kind of celebrating a lot of what God has done in 2025. I was reflecting back on our last podcast a few weeks ago as well, and our top 10 list and just some of the things that impacted me, impacted you in 2025. And one of the things I put on there was a book, and we just finished reading that book. I had read the book, and we finished reading the book in our Grow group. And I think almost everyone in the Grow group was like, yeah, this is one of the better books that we've recently read. And so Living Life Backwards is the book. So just another shameless plug for that book. I didn't write it. I don't know the guy. I'm not getting any money to plug it, but a really good book if someone's looking for a challenging book in 2026. It really challenges us on in every area of our life, from what we do with our finances to what we do with our time, to our attitude, perspective, to what we value. Just a really, really good book. But no, I'm excited about 2026. Lots going on. Definitely church-wide. We've got grow groups kicking off and care groups kicking off. Really excited. We got a couple new care groups that are going to be starting this year, as well as we've got an adult retreat going on. I think there's 45 people right now going on that. Kind of a deeper dive type retreat. Really want to challenge people. If they can carve out a weekend, it's going to be a powerful weekend at Village Creek Bible Camp. So you have that beautiful setting, but some great teaching and community, stable community. There's student ministry, kids ministry kicking off. We're getting ready for 4 services, lots of volunteer opportunities. I mean, just a lot going on at Crossway Church Holistic. And so, I'm excited. I'm excited what God's going to do in 2026.
It is really exciting time. And we, I feel like we've been saying that and busy time. And I feel like we've been saying that, every week for the last year or so, but it's true. There's so much going on in life. But did you have a good holiday, good Christmas? I mean, I know you're a big Christmas guy, but it's, and coming down off the, I don't know if down off the Christmas Eve services is the right way to put it, but I know it's a lot of energy that goes into the Christmas Eve services. And so, were you able to have a good Christmas and a good New Year, those types of things?
Yeah, it was great. I mean, it was super busy, as you mentioned, both at church and the way Christmas fell this year. We had like full regular weekend services. And then we did at Germantown 6 Christmas Eve services and 2 at Sussex and 2 at North Shore. And then we did a end of the year communion service, and then all the other things that people don't see, finances and end of the year planning and all the pastoral care, counseling, like everything that all the team members are leading, facilities and what's happening with the snow. And so, I mean, there's so much to being a community of faith, a church, that lands at the end of the calendar year. So no, great time, but busy time. God moved in a powerful way. It was really exciting to hear stories of people who for the very first time or in a long, long time reconnected to church and the community of faith, and hearing about hundreds of people that for the very first time said, hey, I'm here and I have a need, or I want to get connected, or I want to learn more about Jesus.
Right.
So really exciting. Then obviously now we're a couple weeks into the new year, and we are diving into the book of Numbers. Every year we do 1 or 2 Old Testament book studies. Sometimes they're more thematic. This is a little more thematic. We're not going chapter by chapter or verse by verse through Numbers. If we did that, I think we'd lose 80% of the congregation. Like, there's
and it would take us 2.5 years.
And it would take us, a long time. Like, the names. Now, this week, we're just going to talk about names.
Right,
and actually, names are important and powerful in the scripture. But we're taking chunks of it, and we're taking 6 weeks to go through a book that I think most people, and at least I'll just talk about my own church experience. I don't remember ever hearing sermons. And maybe a reference to the book of Numbers, but like a whole series through the book of Numbers. A couple of years ago, we did Leviticus. We've done big chunks of Genesis and Exodus and Malachi. Malachi was actually one of my favorite Old Testament series. I might have done it twice. I'm not sure.
Okay.
It's a pretty in-your-face book. Like, woo, God is fired up. And but Numbers is really rich. We kicked it off 2 weeks ago with our teaching team, leaning into it, did a great job, and gave us kind of a broader view of sort of what's going on in Numbers and setting it up in the story of the Old Testament, the story of all of the scriptures, and our story.
Yeah, and you kind of kicked off, your sermon this weekend, kind of talking about, this reminding the Israelites, or the contextualizing that they were in the wilderness, and they were kind of. And you drew this parallel to the wilderness of our lives, and how, and a lot of the sermon was based on how do we live and exist in the wilderness of our lives. And just to kind of set up the rest of the conversation, how do you define like the wilderness that we might be experiencing? Because, I live in suburban Wisconsin. I don't feel like I'm in the wilderness. So what do you mean by the wilderness kind of our lives?
Yeah. So first, going back to the book of Numbers contextually, and this will be repeated. It was kicked off by the team who preached the first sermon in the series, which was Logan and Tim and Troy, who kicked it off. And then this week it's myself, or last week, myself and the team at the other campuses. One of the things that we see is that Numbers is recording the time, along with other texts in the Old Testament, that the Hebrew people, the Jewish people, had in the desert, in the wilderness. The word for Numbers in the Hebrew, or the name for the book in the Hebrew is in the wilderness.
Okay.
In the Greek Septuagint, so the Old Testament was translated to Greek, and it's called the Greek Septuagint. It's called Numbers off of the census that was taken in the first 5 books. So anyways, it records from the time being rescued from slavery in Egypt right up to when they're going to enter the Promised Land. And we're going to discover this week that they disobey, and there's conflict and complaining, and eventually they wander for 40 years in the wilderness. So it was a literal wilderness, but it was also emotionally and spiritually the wilderness as well for them, and it is for us. And so we see ourselves in the story where the wilderness is just a picture of life. Like if you've ever been in the wilderness, or Catamaran, or Catamaran, right? That's the park. Is that
Catamaran?
The park? Yeah, Catamaran, right? North and south, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Sometimes I'll have a reference. I'm like, oh no, that was Illinois, or that was New Hampshire, New Jersey, other places I've lived. Right.
Catamaran
that's Wisconsin,
is here.
Right. Yeah. Catamaran. You're just like to just think of the forest, think of the woods, and there's beauty and opportunity and adventure, and there's danger and there's challenges. And I remember as a kid, I was running through the woods. So I lived in the mountains of northern New Jersey. Yes, mountains of northern New Jersey. It's beautiful. And I was running through the woods by the creek with a couple of friends. And full disclosure, my parents told me don't go into the woods. So I was being disobedient. And I was down there, and I tripped over a root. Is that how you say it?
Yes.
Yes. And so sometimes I have this like weird like East Coast, Midwest, New York, accent that kind of all merges. And anyway, and my foot got caught under. and I fell, and there was a rock, and I hit a rock, and my head split wide open. Yeah. Blood was like going everywhere. It was gushing down. I'm running back home. I'm screaming like the neighbors are wet, and there's like this mask of blood as I go home. And I got taken to the hospital by my mom. And so that's the wilderness, right? Sometimes there's fishing and beauty and sunlight and rain and wonderful bugs, and bugs can be wonderful, and all of this opportunity, camping, and then sometimes you trip over a root and you crack your head open and you're filled with a mask of blood. Right. So that's a picture of life.
Yeah. Right. Like you can, there's, like you said, both beauty and wonder, but also it's a dangerous, risky place that you kind of got to be on your game. You kind of have to be prepared in a lot of ways to be going through it.
And one text message, one phone call, we know this, changes everything. Right. You think your day is going one way, and then you get that phone call, that text message, and it doesn't have to be anything big. It could even be something at work where you thought that your meetings, this was the plan, and then a sprinkler head breaks, or a flood in your basement, or a kid starts puking at school and you have to pick them up, or obviously some of the really huge things in life as well. Not that those things aren't huge. Those things are huge. But I'm thinking of like, stage 4 cancer.
All right. Absolutely.
The things that, or you get that call. I remember when I got the call, I was flying to a conference in Mexico with Amy, and I got the call, Dad just died. Like that changes that. Like you're going one way, you have your whole week planned, and then you get the phone call, Dad just died. And that happened several years ago. Like that changes everything.
Yeah. That is how, the wilderness is, and that's how the Israelites kind of experienced the wilderness in a lot of ways as well. So, but during this time, in the wilderness, the Israelites are being led by Moses, and when I have looked at and studied Moses' life, like the guy literally stood in the same room as God and chatted with him, right? Like on the regular,
the tent of meeting,
the tabernacle,
right?
And you had this idea that we have more revelation now and know more about God's ultimate plan than Moses did. And that kind of messed me up a little bit, because when I think about Moses, he's it, right? He's revered. It was physically the closest, other than Jesus, physically the closest person to God, in that way. And so just to think that we have more revelation than Moses did about what God's ultimate plan is, it's kind of an interesting thing to chew on this weekend.
It's one of my favorite conversations because we can really go there with this.
Yeah.
So not only do we have more revelation, because again, Moses did have this conversation with God. We have a conversation with God too. It's called prayer.
Right.
But audibly God was speaking to him. He wrote the first 5 books of the Bible: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. It's debated, but that's the traditional view. We won't, we can get into all of that at a different kind of podcast if people are interested. But the historical view is that he, inspired by the Holy Spirit, wrote the first 5 books of the Bible. Obviously, he wasn't present in Genesis 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, way back. So that had to be revealed to him, supernaturally by God. So he had that, but he didn't have all the rest of the Old Testament. He didn't have the story of Samuel. He didn't know the story of David. He didn't have some of the wisdom literature like Ecclesiastes. He didn't have the Gospels. He didn't have Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the letters of Paul and Peter and James. He did not have Revelation, the letter of Revelation. I mean, so you think about it. You think about all that he had, but then all that he didn't know. Right. And God was revealing to Moses what Moses needed to know within his cultural context, which is limiting. Where God has revealed to us, yes, within our cultural context, everything that we need to know in the whole scope of 66 books in the Bible. In addition to that, we have something else that Moses didn't have. We have almost 2,000 years of church history. So we have individuals like Augustine and Aquinas and Barth and Bonhoeffer, and I mean the list goes on, and C.S. Lewis, and we have people like N.T. Wright and D.A. Carson, and the list goes on and on and on.
Right.
Just it's a splattering of names of theologians and people that have written who are studying the text, who have dedicated their lives to it, as well as examples of all the different movements, the Methodist Church and the Episcopalians and the Baptists, and then the Southern Baptists and the Conservative Baptists and the Free Baptists, and there's a lot of Baptists, right? And all and then, and Assemblies of God and Alliance that we associate with, and independent churches. And we have all of this. And we have the Eastern Orthodox Church and the Coptic Church and the, and the Catholic Church. And we have all of these examples of how people have understood the life of Christ in Scripture holistically and lived it out to draw from. So think about all that revelation. And we are, so taking it another step, not only do we have more revelation than Moses had, even though Moses had these conversations with God in the tent, but we are held accountable to the level of revelation that we receive. And I know we've talked about this before, but that idea helps lean into a lot of the challenges of Christendom and the sovereignty of God and our responsibility. So we live today in a country where we have the freedom to do a podcast like this. We were just talking together with Luke, who helps produce our podcasts, about other podcasts. And so we have access to more podcasts than we'll ever listen to in our life.
Right.
We have access to books. We have this morning, had a couple of books on my desk. We're reading a book together in our director team, The Dark Side of Leadership, which is just showing like our strengths and weaknesses and areas where we need to be careful. There's so many different resources that we have, as well as the Bible. And so right here, a good friend of mine gave me this Bible, and it's in German. I don't read German, but I just love old books, and it's just so cool how it's put together, and just the history. And I'll just have to have one of my German-speaking friends, and we have a partnership in Germany, so we have a few. Check this out for me, read this. But I just think about that, the history behind the individuals that put this Bible together, and I'm not talking about the canon of the Bible, like this version of it here in German, and then those who had read it, and maybe it was a stay-at-home parent, maybe it was a business person, maybe it was a pastor, a missionary, like who knows, like who had this in their hands. And so you think about that, and we have access to so many different Bibles and the Bible app and translations, and then there's churches everywhere. There's great churches. Recently I was on a podcast at Northbrook Church, and a good friend of mine, Pastor Mike, just a great church and doing great work, and an amazing pastor. And there's so many churches that we can connect with. So think about the revelation that we have, the Bible, all of the resources, books, all the scholarly work, all the examples throughout history, all the churches on every corner, everything. And not to mention, again, all 66 books and books outside of the Bible, what we call non-canonical books. Like you can read 1st and 2nd Maccabees and learn about the Maccabean revolt and stuff. I mean, we have so much more than Moses had. And we are responsible to the revelation we've received. So that should cause us to be humble and to be leaning into living as followers of Christ in this time. We have everything we need to know. Again, not everything that we want to know, but everything we need to know. So that's this idea when I read Moses in the tent of meeting and talking with God and hearing from God and getting the Mosaic Law, and specifically in the sermon, I was like, they were wondering, well, what if I can't, engage the Passover at that time for various reasons? Is there an alternate opportunity? And so Moses is like, well, let me ask God. And he does. And God says, yes, there is. And you can read all about that in Numbers. But, and that just shows again how good God is and gracious God is. And God gets how hard life is. Like I think for the serious Christ follower, one more thing, I know I'm kind of a long rant here, but one more thing, for the serious Christ follower, generally speaking, we're harder on ourselves than God is. For the serious Christ follower. I'm not talking for the casual, like, hey, I'm just going to punch the clock, do my religious thing. I prayed a prayer, fire insurance kind of salvation, like all of that. But for the person who's really leaning in, like, I love Jesus. I'm serious about being a Christ follower. I'm serious about studying the word. Generally speaking, I think we're harder on ourselves than God is on us.
That's
I just went off.
But that's a pretty interesting statement there. But when you're talking through, this accountability to the level of revelation that we have, and so when I hear you say that, I'm like, oh, I'm held to a higher standard than Moses was, and that freaks me out a little bit, right? And maybe I am being too hard on myself, but probably not, And so what are we kind of supposed to do with that? Because I definitely don't feel like I have a higher level of understanding than Moses does. I definitely don't feel like I live my life. And I know Moses had his challenges. We all do, but but that is to me, that's an overwhelming statement or overwhelming to think about and process. How would you recommend I go about utilizing the information or applying that truth?
Again, I think sometimes, especially if we've been in church any number of years, and both of us have been in church a long time,
a few,
and we work for a church. I think sometimes we're always trying to find like that new, like, ooh, that deeper truth. That I have to say it like that.
That was a good podcast.
Right. That deeper truth. That, that nuance, and that's all fine. I like that stuff. I like when I'm reading, I'm like, oh, I didn't know the Hebrew said that, or I didn't recognize that piece of it. And there's a lot of that in Numbers, a lot of information. But I do think it does go back to the basics. It's like eating. There's all these like some new information has come out about eating, I guess, from the government. I don't know if it's new, but some new mandates, new rules, all those kind of things. I don't know if you saw that recently. And there's nothing new, like portion control. Right. Portion control is important, right? Eat and move.
Right.
Just move, like exercise. And if something is artificial, it's probably not that good for you, and it's artificial, I mean, to the best of our abilities, right? Eating clean and, too many deep fried dinners, probably not good, right? I mean, it's like basic, right? And I love deep fried food, by the way. Actually, I just got, just a little exit, a little free.
Sure.
So I finally, we got this oven, nothing that fancy, but the air fryer is like built into the oven.
Oh, fancy.
But it wasn't really working well. I was like, what's going on? Well, you have to buy like a special rack to put in it.
Okay.
So I finally got the rack, to put in it. And I haven't used it yet.
Oh, you haven't?
I'm so excited.
I was waiting.
No, I'm so excited. I can't wait
to
to use it and see like how does it work. So, because the air frying is better than deep frying. Those but it doesn't taste better. But anyways, so oh man, just the oil. Anyway, we go. So all of that to say, I think that like there's some new discoveries. Obviously, I get it with food and diet and nutrition and exercise, and I'm not discounting that, but just like the basics,
right?
Are so like I need to exercise. I need to move a little bit more. I need to take a walk. I need to not eat a whole chicken so in one meal, or whatever it is. And so I think that's the same thing with our Christian walk. What do we do with that? Well, we read the book. And I know people are like, but that's, So I thank God that he made it simple. Like it's not that complex. Like read the book, meditate on the Bible, talk about it in community. That's what we're doing here. We're just having have friends in your life, mentors, friends, good friends like we are to process, to push on each other, to, what do you think about what's going on in the political world right now? And how does that connect to the Bible? Like those conversations are best on one-on-one or in groups. And all of those kind of things serve. And I'm telling you, I know I'm like a broken record. People are going to be like, all right, move on. But I'm finding the older I get, and this is what I see true in other like faithful Christians that have been following Christ for decades and are still on fire for Jesus. I think one of the major differences isn't that they may know the Bible more, and they do have great knowledge of the Bible, or that they memorize more Bible verses, or that they heard more sermons. I mean, how many sermons can we remember? I barely remember any sermons, and I've heard thousands and thousands of sermons. And again, but it's like food, right? Let me just say this. So people are like, oh, that's not important. No, sermons are important because it's like eating. Like I don't remember what I ate a month ago, but if I ate Snickers every single day, there would be a problem. And so I'm glad that a month ago, I know I had broccoli. I don't know what day I had broccoli. I know I had Brussels sprouts. I don't know what day I had I had a lot of Christmas cookies too. So, but I mean, my point is like, sermons are like that. So if they're, solid, healthy eating and for our own spiritual life. So it's like, it's serving. Like, we need to listen to sermons and we need to fill our minds. Romans 12. But we need to serve, and hands down, it's serving where I find that God is really growing me and challenging me. And so it's not just serving formally, and it is. serving the church, like serving student ministry, serving kids ministry, serving safety ministry. So, and we just need safety-minded people. Like you don't have to be a police officer or, retired military, and that's great for those that are out there that are here.
Absolutely.
Like, we want you to serve, but people who have a safety mindset or people who have a medical background or people, lots of different ways to serve in safety ministry, but so serve in those formal areas. And then I gave kind of, I guess, a shameless plug for the safety ministry and the needs there. But we're so thankful for that team of individuals. But serve your wife if you're married. Serve your roommate. If you have roommates. And I remember I lived with 3 guys in grad school, and we had a condo. And man, we could have done better serving each other, especially keeping the place clean. Yeah. We had a crock pot with leftovers in the fridge for a full year.
That's gross, man.
Man, that is,
That's gross.
That's a different story for a different
day.
When
I was in college, I never even I don't even know what cooking with a crock pot would even look like. So I don't know if
it was grad school.
I don't know if you were a little older.
No. It was graduate school. So no, in college it was like ramen noodles and Hormel chili, and I'm going to age myself now, 59 cents Taco Bell menu when my food card ran out, which was always about 2 weeks before the end of the semester because I ate way too much. So it's just the way it worked. We serve and be in community, and I do think like knowing what's under the waterline in our life, that's really important. Like, why do I do what I do? Why do I say what I say? Why do I think what I think? And recently I was watching a short podcast on the algorithm of discipleship, and it's this idea that everything that we see on social media, a lot of the feeds that we follow, even suggestions that we get on streaming, Netflix, did you ever log into someone's, and I'm not saying this in because you're trying to take it. You're you're at someomel's house and you're in there. I'm not promoting taking whatever streaming stuff. But anyways, that's a whole other conversation. But where you see someone else's like Netflix and it's like, wow, this looks different than mine. Because our life is Amazon, the stuff that pops up on Amazon, the stuff you get, this isn't happenstance. There's an algorithm. And so there's this idea that the algorithms of our life are discipling us more than the community of faith, the Bible, the Holy Spirit, which, wow, that's a whole podcast right there. And so we need to be intentionally engaging the community of faith, I would say more today than ever because of that. Inevitably it's Instagram, it's TikTok, it's Facebook, it's Netflix, it's Hulu, it's all of the other, it's Amazon, it's just our Google searches, our ChatGPT searches. I did something this year. At the end of the year, I asked ChatGPT based on my searches something. And it was just like, whoa, Terminator, scary. And so that we have to recognize that. It's not an accident, the certain political angles that I see versus what somebody else sees. And it's not just politics. It's money. It's everything, It's entertainment. So there's this algorithm. If we're not intentionally in community, serving in community, being mentor relationships, grow groups, care groups, attending worship service regularly, all of those things, we are going to be discipled by the algorithms of life more than we are by the community of faith that God has ordained, and obviously God's word and the work of the Spirit. So it's not new. The algorithm challenge is new, but how we lean into that is not new.
Yeah, I mean, and I really, really resonate with that. And I feel like these days, I don't know if harder is the right word, but we need to be more intentional, I think, about those things, because like you said, we're impacted by so many other things that are intentionally trying to pull our attention towards them. Like you said, whether it's social media, whether it's streaming services, whether it's, whatever it might be, it's insane the amount of research and time and energy that goes into getting you to click on a link. Right. It's incredible.
There's so much data about you out there. Right. More than you realize or I realize, more than we're comfortable with. Yep. And it's driving things we don't even recognize. Yeah. Like health decisions. I mean, it's everywhere.
Yeah, it's everywhere. And so being more intentional about getting involved in the church and doing the things to exercise. And again, it's not works, and this isn't a conversation like I'm talking about works or anything like that. But
Reformation happened over 500 years ago.
Right.
Come on, let's move on.
But works, or excuse me, but intentional effort into exercising that, the muscles of your Christianity, if you will. And, kind of go back to what you were saying about serving a little bit. When I was in college, I was attending a church, and they were starting kind of a kids ministry. Like they historically had like, nursery type stuff, but they didn't have a formal kids ministry, and they were starting it. And they asked me to volunteer on it. And I ended up, because the need was really high because they were just kicking it off and it was a smaller church, I ended up having to volunteer like every weekend for it. And I'm not saying that needs to be the case for everybody. Like you said, sermons are definitely important. But for that season of my life, I grew more spiritually in that season of my life than I had in the previous 5 years to that and the next 5, just because I was serving and discipling these kids each and every week. And again, I'm not saying that is true of everybody. It needs to happen where you have to serve every week. That's not what I'm saying, but just the rhythm of serving grew me more spiritually in that season than any amount of reading the Bible, which is important, any amount of prayer, which is also important, any amount of listening to sermons, which is also important. And so I would really challenge anybody, if you have not exercised that muscle of serving, that could be why maybe you don't feel like you're growing as much as you want to.
I would go as far to say we have to serve every week. It might not be, serving as a greeter every week. Maybe you're a greeter twice a month.
Right.
But then we're serving in other ways. Yeah. We're going to the food pantry, or you recognize a need of someone in your department at work or at school, and you lean into that need. So there's ways to serve both informally and formally. I have to say, though, if we're going to be a community of faith that transforms culture, we need to serve together, not just in our own echo chamber. And in that idea that I'm passionate about, this type of ministry, I'm passionate about this thing in society, so I'm on my own going to do that. That's good. Do that. But that doesn't transform culture and society in the way that God has called us as a community of faith. There's something when we together in community serve in the name of Christ, not in an obnoxious way, but as the community of faith that is not only helping those individuals or that singular organization, but holistically shifting kind of the cultural needle more toward your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. So I'm not down on that like isolated, like I serve this, I do that.
Right.
But there is something important and crucial and powerful about serving together as the community of faith. And so we need to intentionally recognize how we're being influenced consistently by the culture that is, as Moses was, which again brings us back to Numbers and this idea that all they knew was Egyptian culture and Egyptian gods. Like they were in Egypt so long in their ancestors that they forgot about God. And so when you read the laws, the Mosaic laws, when you read some of the things in Numbers and Leviticus and others, they might feel archaic. Well, one, the Bible is time stamped, right? It's for a particular time period, a cultural context, and then there's a truth that we bring forward for all time. But in addition to that, what we see is God was doing a specific thing. He was saying, look, not only have I physically rescued you out of Egypt, but now I want to transform you. I want you to see that those were false gods and the ways in which they treated humans was not the way that I treat humans. And so many of the laws are connected to that. And then it again foreshadows, it points forward, as was pointed out in the last 2 weeks of sermons, to the work of Christ, who fulfills the law, who was the sacrificial lamb that takes away the sins of the world, who was the scapegoat, who fulfilled the duties of the high priest as he sat down, like all of that. And Hebrews is, probably the best book in the New Testament to really kind of see that, how the work of Christ and the life of Christ and the cross fulfills all that we read in Numbers, in Deuteronomy, in the sacrificial laws. Now there's different, we don't have time to get into it, but there's all different. There's laws that govern society in the Old Testament. There's laws specifically for sacrifice to maintain that covenantal relationship. There's what we would say moral laws that continue on today that emerge out of the Old Testament, but that's a different podcast.
Yeah, no, yeah, and that's it's powerful truths, man. That Jesus fulfilled all of those laws. And I know oftentimes when we study and we read the Old Testament, I know last year we looked at Leviticus a bit. It's kind of like, wow, that's pretty intense way to live, and that Jesus fulfilled all of that in our lives, in one fell swoop. It's important to remember.
Yeah. So I think you said something earlier, and I don't know if we want to make this the title of the podcast, but lean in.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about that. In 2026, what are you leaning into? And as we think about where this conversation has gone, which we never really know where it's going to go. I mean, we riffed off of the message and kind of go where it takes us.
Yeah.
But, are we going to lean in with intentionality to hearing from God? Like Moses heard from God in Numbers, but not in the exact cultural way that Moses heard from God.
Yeah.
We're not suggesting that you set up a tent in the backyard and wait till you audibly hear from God.
Right.
Now, you could set a tent up in the backyard and you can have some solitude time. That might be a good idea for some people. But that we're going to do it in through the word, the community of faith, groups, serving, all that we talked about. Because if we don't, then we are going to be formed more by the culture that we're in, and specifically the algorithms and all of the data that is available on each of us. And that's a scary thought. And so lean into the community of faith in all aspects. Connect, grow, live, as we call about, at Crossway, large group worship, grow, smaller groups, mentor relationships, all those type of groups, and live, serving in the church, serving in the community, serving in the world.
Well, this is the Extra 10. My name is Ben Carlin, here with Jason Esposito. Jason, Happy New Year. Looking forward to 2026. And we'll lean in.
Yeah, leaning in. All right. Take care. Have a great day, Ben.